Well, my immediate challenge and opportunity is breaking this cycle of overeating. I had this binge eating disorder that started with that emotional eating back in 2018, and the answer is surrender. That one is proven to be really hard for me. I have been able to surrender. What can be harder to surrender and forgive your rapist, And I did. But this one, for some reason, for whatever reason, I am still struggling with it, but I know the answer, and the answer is surrender.
Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and today my guest is Mirta Fuget. Did I get it? Did I get it right
You
this
got
time?
it right.
Mirta Fuget. It's like I forgot. I
Forget
knew I would.
about it.
I forget about it. I love it. So I'm just going to fire this off real quick, then we'll get cooking. So Mirta is a professional, a mother of two. She was born and raised in Venezuela, and she earned her law degree in 1992 before moving to the United States in 1999. She became a certified court interpreter in 2001. Actually started her own business in doing that as a certified court interpreter for almost 18 years. She later obtained her California law license and practiced criminal law since January of 2001. And that's just the tip of the iceberg for my friend. So we can't wait to jump in there. But like I mentioned, we are the What If You Could podcast. So I'm not going to let her off the cook. I'm going to ask you the question. Mirta, what is your what if you could?
Well, thank you, Gary, for that introduction. By the way, it's 2021. That's when I obtained my law license here in California. What if I could? I have more than one. What if I could? One of them that comes to mind if is what if I could heal my heart like this? What if I could heal my mind just like this? But I do know that, that is not possible. It is a process. Life, I know this sounds like a cliche, and I might throw a few cliches here and there, but life is truly um, about 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond to it. And we all go through struggles and we all go through setbacks. And we have a choice to make. We can choose to let those setbacks define us or just freeze us or bring us down, or we can choose to grow, learn, and and use them as stepping stones. So yes, I would love to heal like that. And what if I could, heal like that? It would be wonderful. But it's part of the growth process not to heal like that.
Well, let me ask you a question. How long is it supposed to take? Why can't we heal like that? Is there a set time period we're supposed to wait, or how long should it take before you heal?
It should take however long it should take. It depends on the individual. It depends on how willing, how open we are to heal. It depends on a big one, which is something that I have learned and I continue to learn, and I keep learning and unlearning because I am very stubborn and I am a control freak. I tend to be a control freak, which is how much we are willing to surrender so that we can heal. How much we are willing to, for example, there is this thing that about pain. Pain is something that makes us feel safe because sometimes it feels better or safer to stay in a pain that we know, in a pain that we have learned how to survive and we know the rules and we have learned how to survive in that pain, as opposed to just surrendering and having that free fall feeling that comes with just letting go, surrendering, and experiencing healing and freedom, which is very unknown, which is very scary because we don't control the rules, because we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know if it is going to happen.
Sometimes, and trust me, having been there myself, still there. um, so this is not a negative comment about anything, but there's a lot of times where we stay stuck because, like you said, it's safe. and it becomes our identity almost. It's like I am a victim of fill in the blank. And so I'm going to live like that, and I'm going to wear that on my sleeve, and that is who and what I am. I am this victim. This happened to me, and so that's who I am. And sometimes we choose to stay there.
Correct. And I am glad you brought that up because, two things. One, I would like to bring up a few things that have happened to me in life, but I don't want to bring them up as in, oh my goodness, Gary, look at what happened to me. Poor me. I am a victim. And also, it is so easy to fall in that victim cycle. Again, it is comfortable. We know the rules. We receive attention. We receive the, oh my goodness, poor you that comes, and it feeds it, and we get stuck there.
Oh. And that's why I asked you the initial question of how long should it take? You know, do we want to heal like that? And there's a lot of different people, like you talk to Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins will say, "Well, I'll heal you of anything in 30 seconds." And he made a massive fortune doing that, right? Like doing on stage and bringing these people up and curing their phobias or whatever, like in 30 seconds. So there's a lot of people's beliefs are you can let these things go as quickly as you want to, or I could put you in therapy for the next 37 years and have you show up every week at 1 o'clock and pay me $150. And I could say, so how does that make you feel? Right. So there's
Correct.
so it
Or
really matters kind of at different thought periods of how we want to come out of what we have. And
correct.
and and
Those
I'm not I'm not I'm
insecures.
not I'm not placing blame on anybody. I've been in my shit for 11 years, so I'm I'm not putting blame on anybody. Trust me on that.
I hear you. I hear you. But I do have a problem with those insta cures. Is that maybe at the moment I went through one, I fell for one. I used to have panic attacks. And I went to this guy who, he hypnotized me. He did something. And I was having panic attacks for, every single day, several times a day for years. And then after I went to see this guy, I didn't have panic attacks for a few days and it was an insta cure. However, the panic attacks came back because I didn't go through the process of healing. I believe we have to go through it. The thing is that we want to stay because it is painful to go through it, and it is the typical example of having an abscess, and it hurts, and it's here, and there's pus and all that horrible stuff. And what do we have to do? We have to cut it open, drain it. It hurts, it smells. We have to put medicine in there. It stings. We scream, we cry, we throw a tantrum, and it heals. Okay, we have to go through that process. It's we have to.
Well, I think part of what you said is exposing it. You have to expose it because we don't want to stare at it. Like everyone who's listening to this podcast has heard me say this 5 billion times, but when my wife passed, uh, December 8th of 2014, from that day on till this moment, I've been in a deep grief period. But I've done some interesting grief work over the last 4 years that has made a substantial difference. And I think that the ability to do, like you said, is first of all, you have to expose what it is. And a lot of people don't know what it is. For example, you've had a number of things happen to you, and we're going to talk about those things. So you might say, this one thing is what's been causing me this pain for all of these years. The truth of the matter is, it might be something completely different. You know what I mean? So you have to expose that initial thing that's causing you all this pain, and then you can finally heal it.
Correct. And I'm in the middle of that process as well because I had the most painful, most devastating experience that I have gone through was in 2021 was the breakup of my family. It was sudden and it was unexpected the way it happened, and it brought me down completely to my knees. And then I asked God to show me what my role was, to bring me self awareness. And boy, be careful what you pray for. because it did. And then it exposed from childhood, it exposed where things came from and why. At least my side of it, which is what I wanted to learn. Okay, how did it come to this? How did my life come to this? And boy, it did. I mean, I had a pretty sucky childhood, you know, where it comes to emotions, if I may bring certain
Oh, yeah. Whatever. I told you this is your podcast. I'm just hanging out listening to you. So you go wherever you want to go with it. But I mean, but you were born and raised in Venezuela,
that is
mind you.
correct.
So your mother and father raised
Mhm.
you in Venezuela. So your childhood was spent there. So what was it about your childhood that was it just Venezuela stuff? Was it poverty? Was it this? Or was it family specific that was challenging?
It was family specific. It was because I actually was blessed to live in Venezuela during the bonanza in the 70s and 80s. Venezuela was extremely rich. We were fine. We were middle class. We were fine. We did not have any financial issues. Um, but it was my maternal grandmother was living with us. My mom would go help my dad at the family business. So my maternal grandmother was in charge of everything that had to do with me. And I have come to forgive her, but this was an extremely bitter, angry, almost evil person. Yes. So it was, at the time I was born, I was, I guess she was tired of helping raise my older siblings. I'm the baby in the family. So
How many kids did your mom and dad have?
five.
That's not bad.
No, no, and they had the first three in a row. I mean, like my sister, brother, and sister, they were born 1 year, after the other. Then about 4 years later, another sister was born, and then 6 years later, whoops, surprise. Yeah, I was not in the plans there. Yeah. So, there is that age difference. There is the siblings, not wanting to have anything to do with me. I was basically the annoyance in the house. Everybody was sending me away, yelling at me and whatnot, including my mom. I remember my mom used to tell me, "Hey, go tell your grandma to give you some tente allá." Tente allá, I thought it was like a dessert or something. Tente allá in Spanish stands for keep you there. So, so yeah. So then, my grandmother, who was the one in charge of me, um, she would use her discipline methods were pretty terrible. It was like a daily screaming. It was a daily screaming. It was the fixing my hair included, like banging my hair with a brush, pulling, calling me names every single day. She had some favorite things that she would say nonstop many times a day. And it was, you are nobody.
Mm.
Do you think you're somebody? And, the stupid, dumb, and all that. And then when, you know, I have memories from when I was 2, 3 years old, um, very early memories. And when you are raised by somebody who's screaming at you, you don't have any emotional control. I was very tantrumy too as a child, and it was really hard for her to control me. So her punishment methods were, for example, we had an underground water tank. She would open the lid to the water tank and she would pretend to jump and tell me that she was going to kill herself because she didn't want to live anymore because of me. She would tell me, "You're killing me," and she would pretend to jump, or she would actually drag me and pretend she was going to throw me in the underwater tank. And many of these times I would pee myself in terror, and then she would scream at me and call me a pig because I peed myself, or she would like to take me to one of the small bathrooms upstairs, close the door. It was pretty dark. She would light a candle, roll her eyes, and invoke Satan and ask Satan to take me. And of course, I would pee myself in terror. So imagine what that does to a child, you know? Now, I developed the human brain is amazing. Okay. I relatively recently discovered a mechanism. I didn't know that it was happening, but at the time, my brain developed dissociation from these experiences, on a daily basis, my brain dissociated as a defense mechanism. It's like the brain it's protecting your emotions, that doesn't want to deal with you anymore. And I learned how to dissociate. Now, dissociation, which I didn't know I was doing it until I had a very scary experience about a year and a half ago, um, has served me as a good tool subconsciously to protect me from certain things. But at the same time, it's like a double-edged sword, because sometimes you dissociate, you cannot connect with the moment. Sometimes you dissociate and you come across as weird, which I did throughout preschool, elementary. It didn't help that I was really considered a really ugly child, and I was bullied throughout elementary. In fact, the two nicknames that they had for me in school were catfish and booger, because I was so ugly. So, you're getting called these names at school. You're getting all these messages at home. Um, and, I would go home and I would complain about what I was being called at school. And then my mom or my grandma would tell me, "Oh, and you're so stupid that you believe them." So I would escape. I would escape, and I became that child that would blurt things out, because my mind, I would subtract myself from the situation, and I would be so gone that I would just start talking about whatever my mind was in whatever planet I was. So, but that was a defense mechanism. So, um, I discovered dissociation because about 2 years ago, I ran into a fellow interpreter. Well, I was already an attorney. She was an interpreter at the time. We were talking in court, and she asked me about my husband, and I said, "No, we are divorced." And I started talking about it, and suddenly I started hearing my voice like it was coming from somebody else about 3 feet from me. So I was talking and I was hearing me. It's like I completely, that is the extreme form of dissociation. It was so painful for me to talk about it, about the family breakup, that my brain really dissociated from my body. It was an call it an out of body experience or whatnot. And that scared me very much. And I did my research, and then again I prayed about it, and God showed me, "Girl, you learned how to do that since you were little." And all these things came crashing like boom, like this is, oh, it explained so much. Now, I went through a lot of pain, yes, but I am so thankful to have that understanding now. It's that, oh, that is why. Oh, now I understand this. Oh, that is why. And self awareness is one of the best gifts that God has given me. It has hurt, because I have also had to see my own fault in things and my own wrongdoings, but I understand why. And the only way we learn not to repeat a mistake, or not to repeat a habit or a conduct or a behavior, is to have awareness about it.
You said you came here, in what, 99? So how old were you when you came to America?
I was 29.
You were 29 years old when you came to
Yeah,
America.
I'm
So
56 now. Yes.
were you, I mean, you didn't live with did you live with your folks the whole time? I know that's pretty common in a lot of places. Were you live with your folks the whole time that you were in Venezuela?
Not the entire time. There was a time when I moved out of the house after so many years of, after my grandmother passed away, my mom took charge of me. And that's when she discovered, for example, things like my grandmother was bathing me every week or two. She discovered all these things, all this neglect, and she started taking care of me. But remember, she was raised by the same person. So shortly afterwards, she started treating me like her mother treated her. And then in my teen years, the 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 words changed to, calling me a whore, a slut, and whatnot, if I deviated from the very narrow path. And that path was very narrow. My mom was extremely rigid, and she had issues with all my sisters. So at home, there was a lot of tension between my mom and my sisters. And I guess with her best intention, with whatever tools she had, because remember how by whom she was raised, she would pit us against each other. She would make us compete to see if we would all rise to the top by trying to be better than the other one. Well, that made everybody hate everybody and her. So there was a lot of contention there. And the situation with my mom became unbearable in my teen years. I mean, it felt like a very conditional love. If I walked a very straight, narrow path, she would give me affection. But as soon as I deviated a little, the name calling would come back. That, you disgust me, you are worthless, you're trash, and all that. And all those names would come back, and the distancing would come back. So, and on top of that, it's like not letting me go anywhere, not letting me do anything. I was always at the house. I was not allowed to go visit with friends or anything. So at one point, I moved out of my parents' house in my early 20s. And that is when you know, by then I had very little sense of self worth because of all these things that I have told you. And since I had what is called now a glow up in my early teen years, I went from being the catfish and the booger. All of a sudden, I became an attractive lady, and the boys were paying attention. That was the first time I felt accepted. So my brain made a link between looking good and affection. So deep inside, I felt I was only worth of affection if I looked good. My looks were completely because I was worthless as a person. I was told so. I was treated like that. So my brain made that connection. All of a sudden, oh, I look good. I have attention. This is it. That's all it is about. So I made a lot of bad choices when it came to partners, romantic partners. And when I moved out of my parents' house, um, I was in a relationship it was extremely toxic. It was a toxic relationship. And it got to a point in which I broke up with him. And he did not accept the breakup. And at one point, it's a very long, complicated story, but at one point he said, okay, fine. I just come by to my apartment, come back, get your sweaters, your CDs, whatever you exchange when you're a boyfriend and girlfriend and whatnot. When I went to his apartment, um, he locked the door behind, put the key in his pocket, and then it was a 6-hour ordeal where I was raped, beat up. I had a knife put to my throat, to my abdomen. It was a 6-hour ordeal. I did what I needed to do to escape, and I actually escaped. I ended up escaping. At the time, my dad was battling cancer, and a friend of mine, I wanted to go to the police, and a friend of mine told me, oh, don't, that's going to kill your dad. So I didn't go to the police. And this guy kept showing up. It was a nightmare. Okay, so yeah, I moved up. I moved out of my parents' house, but at one point my mom asked me to come back because my dad, it was really bad. His health was horrible. His agony extended. It was just terrible. So I moved back with them. And there was, I want to say that dissociation at the time at least protected me from that horrible thing that had happened. I mean, I had just been assaulted, and my dad was facing cancer, and I just kept functioning. I just kept functioning. I I was working full time. I was attending law school at night. I was learning languages on Saturdays. That's how I learned English, French, and German. I had started Japanese as well. I was doing all these things at the same time and poof, dissociated from what had happened to me, which was it protected my brain, my emotions, but I had not dealt with it. And I had to deal with it years after. So that's why I'm saying we have to go through it. We have to deal with things so that we can heal them.
Yeah, they don't go away,
No, they
like
don't.
what you think. So I would imagine that you've had a lot of trust issues moving forward with relationships.
Yes, a lot of trust issues and PTSD. And, we're talking about something that happened, what, 35 years ago, maybe or so. And still, if If a male figure raises their voice and approaches me, I freeze. I still freeze. And I have healed. I mean, I can talk about this. I have healed, I have processed it. But there's that remain there, that there's something there that a male raises their voice and I just freeze. And I have, on occasion, not only have I gotten completely frozen, but I have actually screamed and crouched and covered involuntarily because, gosh, that was an ordeal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it never that was a obviously a big, substantial, massive incident for that 6-hour period, but truly, you had been raped and abused by your grandmother since she started taking care of you. So, I mean, that was kind of like a crescendo of this massive, constant mental abuse, which then turned into physical abuse, and then it turned into massively physical abuse, almost life-threatening abuse. Um, when did you start to move into the phase of maybe I should face this and start addressing this?
It was after I moved here to the United States, actually. It was afterwards, and it came with my faith. And when I came here back in 1999, that same year, I married my now ex. And in 2002, after much resistance, I actually gave my life to the Lord. I mean, I became a Christian. Oh boy, did I! It was kicking and screaming. I didn't want to. I resisted it, and I understand why. Because we Christians are like the worst poster children for what Christ is supposed to be. I mean, really, I didn't want to become a Christian because I would see these Christians are doing all these things and whatnot. Then I don't want to be like them until I put my eyes on Christ and not on people, you know. And that,
In
huh?
Venezuela, I would imagine everyone's very Catholic, right?
Yes,
So were you raised Catholic?
it was what my mom used to call, we are comfortable Catholics, which meant we did the yeah, we did the rituals, first communion, baptism, first communion. We would not go to mass on Sundays. It was very rare. We would go to churches when there was an event. And then when my grandma died, I don't know how many gazillion rosaries with my mom, and it said the repetition is the ritual, but there is no relationship with God. And the very little relationship with God was this awful God, which is like this condemning guy that if you don't do, if you're not good, he's going to punish you. It was just God the Punisher. There was no loving God there. It was just the punishing God. Yeah.
So when you found your faith, when you chose to give your life to Christ or to Jesus, when you whatever move you made, however you'd like to describe it, um, that was new for you because religion was kind of that thing that happened over there with the church, with the evil nuns who'd slap you around, and you had the priest, and you had the all the stuff going on over there, but that wasn't real religion to you, right?
Correct. And in fact, back in Venezuela, I also, because that didn't feel like anything, I ended up having this milieu of beliefs where I included, you name it, it was there. I was doing like the Silva method of mental control with some Buddhism and New Age and metaphysics. I had, in Venezuela, when they baptize you, they give you a gold chain with a virgin that is specifically the one that,
Well,
I don't know,
did
reigns
not
over
know
your
that.
baptism. And in my chain, I had the Virgin, and I had a David star. I had a pyramid. I had all kinds of symbols. I had like, I don't know, like eight or nine symbols because it was this Millie. It was looking for answers, you know. And in my mid 20s, I also delved a lot into philosophy. I was with someone at the time. I've been married twice, and my first marriage in Venezuela, it was to someone with whom I had a 2-year very deep relationship, and he was an extremely brilliant man. And we used to discuss philosophy, and we would read Milan Kundera, and we would discuss all these philosophical things. And we had these very deep philosophical conversations. And I see now I was looking for an answer. I was constantly looking for an answer and a purpose. And the way I see it is as if I was walking around with my ladder and I'm trying to put it. I was putting it and climbing it and then falling off because I was just putting the ladder on the wrong walls until I know that my ladder right now is on the one perfect, true, real wall, which is Jesus. It's like, oh, there it is. And I have read the Bible cover to cover, and then I have done Bible studies galore. And it's amazing how in the Bible are all these things that you see in all these different tendencies and all these messages and all these teachings and all the answers. Everything is in there. God gave us that, and everything is in there. And it was great to know, not only to feel, but to know that I had made it to where I was supposed to make it, which is I found where the answers are. Now, I don't have the answer. The Bible does. God does. Now I know that I don't need to look elsewhere. I don't. The answers are there.
Do you feel has that removed a lot of this past pain from you? Have you been able to take a lot of that pain and just, like you said, open up that wound, clean it, get the pus out? Have you been able to do that with a lot of your past wound?
Yes, and it has been faith based. I have been in therapy for since I was 19 all the way through when I came here. That's 10 years on and off in therapy. And I have been able to do certain things. For example, one of the good things that I was able to do was at some point in my early 20s, I was able to stand up to my mom and I was able to tell her, I will not talk like this. And I was taught to do this. I will not talk as long as you're insulting me or calling me names. And oh boy, for a couple of months, I mean, it was not good. It just became worse. But I just respectfully kept telling her that because before I would engage with screams and tears and drama. And I just stopped it and I stopped that cycle. So I got that benefit from therapy. But healing these other things, I had not been able to. And certain things that happened during my father's agony and death, I was not able to process them in therapy. But then with mentors within the church, doing spiritual work and prayer and surrender. I mean, there's that word again. It was complete surrender. And I was able to heal so many things. Now I am able to talk about my experience where I was physically and sexually assaulted without choking or breaking down or going into a rage because I used to go into a rage, like wanting to kill that guy or who did it and whatnot. No, it happened to me and it's something that happened. And s-
Well, I was married to a Colombian woman, so rage
oh, yeah.
it's because you're from South America. That's what
Oh, yeah.
that's where the passion comes from, like that.
Oh,
But I can,
yes. I mean, our
but
passion
that
can be really good or really bad and everything
it
in
could be
between.
really, really good, or it could be really, really bad. As long as you're fast enough to dodge plates and knives. Um, but rage is a an interesting emotion, because it can come from so many places, right? You could
Mm,
have righteous rage, you can have fearful rage, you can have rage that's trying to cover up something that you're, so afraid of. And the abuse you took from your grandmother almost is worse than that initial incident. I mean, obviously you were there, not I. That would be horrifically scary, what you went through with that guy for 6 hours. But that constant long-term abuse is what
mm,
really built your foundation of this self-loathing, this I'm not good enough and I'm worthless type
right.
of feeling. If that's what you felt, I don't know, but imagine that was really hard to work your way through. You know, you're supposed to trust your grandmother, you're supposed to trust your mom, you're supposed to
Right.
trust your dad. That guy who raped you and was a psycho murderer, um, there wasn't something there with a long-term trust where you're like, "Well, that guy kinda broke my trust," but your grandmother and your mom, that's hard.
Yes, and I have done, and this is all through God, and He makes all things possible, and only He can do this. Where even after my mom's passing in 2017, she and I were very close, very, very close. But then this process that I told you about that happened after my family breakup in 2021, when all these floodgates open, I started getting angry at my mom. I was able to process the anger, and I was really mad at her. Like, like, how could you? And whatnot. And then I healed and I reconciled. And I did the same work with my grandmother. It's just grace, understanding where they came from. It's not justifying them. It's just understanding where they came from, um, why they might have done it, and then forgiving, and then learning to love the lovable parts. Now, with my grandma, it's really hard to find the lovable part for me because I don't have almost any good memories with her. With my mom, I have tons of good memories. So it was an easier work of forgiving. And I did it, like I said, within the couple of few years of getting mad at her and processing that and then being so thankful. That is another gift that God gives us, which is gratitude. And it is an antidote. Gratitude is an antidote to anger, to anxiety, to depression. Um, Gratitude was what got me through the second worst hole that I have had in my life after the family breakup. And this happened around 2017. Um, like we mentioned, I am Venezuelan, and Venezuela has been under a terrible regime for 27 years now. And I have always been very vocal about it. And I never voted for Hugo Chavez. And I have always been against everything that he did from the beginning. And here in the United States, starting in 2002, there were demonstrations, not only here, but worldwide. Venezuelans worldwide started demonstrating in front of federal buildings, embassies, and it was always peaceful demonstrations. We would get together with flags and posters to bring awareness about the human rights violations and all the horrible things happening in Venezuela. And I became very vocal at the time. And it went in a crescendo. I became more involved in 2014. And by the time 2017 hit, in one of the demonstrations, and we're talking about hundreds of people, by the time the demonstrations were larger and larger, because remember, Venezuela had the largest exodus in the Western Hemisphere in history. It's one third of the population fled the country to flee that regime. Okay, so somebody handed me a megaphone. Okay, oh boy, and I started talking. And the next thing I knew, I had CNN en español, Univision, Telemundo, LA Times, I don't know. And I was leading protests. And then that was it. I was one of the leaders of everything. And I was one calling the police to get the permits to do the demonstrations. And we were doing activities like concerts in parks and fundraising for, to send humanitarian help. And I became very involved in all this. And there was this effort that was made back in 2017. It was a worldwide referendum. And the objective of this referendum, which was being observed by the UN and the Organization of American States and whatnot, was a, a voting worldwide of Venezuelans. And we were voting for certain things that we wanted, like an agenda. And there had to be a transition of power in Venezuela because it was definitely a tyranny, a dictatorship and whatnot. And this worldwide effort, it was overwhelming. It was, we won. We won that vote. And at the time, because it is a dictatorship over there, and it was, and it still is kind of, my name, I found out through someone tied to the regime that my name was on a list that if I went to Venezuela, I would get arrested.
Mm.
Because that's how it is. I mean, the thousands of political prisoners just for saying anything, just for voicing an opinion against the regime, you would get jailed. So it was an almost certainty that if I went to Venezuela, I would get jailed. Uh, I would get arrested at the airport. So at the same time, I'm trying to make sense of, of all this. My mom was diagnosed again with cancer, and she decided not to treat it. So we knew she was going to die. So she and I were very clear. We would talk about it very openly. And the hope was, okay, with this referendum, the regime is going to fall. And she would tell me, you can come here and we can say goodbye. You can see me before I go. Whew. So that was the hope. Turns out that the leaders of the opposition at the time betrayed us. And they sat down. No, we need to sit down and negotiate with the regime. And that eliminated, first of all, that was a humongous heartbreak because imagine fighting so hard and seeing so many people. It's too much we would need hours and hours to explain everything that came into play. But it was all this effort just went to nothing. That was a first blow for me. And knowing that I would not be able to go, my mom told me, don't even think about it. I told her, I need to go see you. And she said, don't even think about it. Think about your children. Think about my grandchildren. They need you.
Mm.
If you get arrested. So I had to say goodbye to my mother over the phone. And she passes away in October of 2017. So that was the second big blow. Up during all this, um, I still had that resilience and that thing that God gives you that you just
Mm.
keep trusting God. You keep trusting God. And I was pretty messed up, but I kept trusting God. I dissociated when my mom passed away. It was I fell to the ground when I found out when I received the call. I just fell to the ground. My legs gave out. And then within a few days, I fell into dissociation. I ended up going to a Halloween party and I dressed up like Madonna and I was singing karaoke. It was, I couldn't handle it. I could not handle it. And that was one of my episodes of dissociation. But it was protection at the same time. But then when all this was happening, I was on a probationary period with the Riverside courts as a certified court interpreter. And when you're on probation, they can let you go anytime they without explanation or whatnot. It's the first 18 months, you're there. So I was there and there were these two interpreters, especially one. Oh my goodness, she did not like me. And she started harassing me and she started reporting me to human resources. And then my lunch pail would be like my drinks would be spilled and punctured. It was really bad. So I had to report her and an investigation was open. And she hated that. And it was real harassment that was happening there. Now, go to 2018, the beginning of 2018, and I received a letter from Human Resources with the results that they found that, yes, she had engaged in harassment, that I had been the victim of workplace harassment by her, and, she would be disciplined. She took a photograph of me that I had taken in front of the courthouse on the street, but with the courthouse in the background, where I had a sign, like a little paper, a sign with a hashtag supporting an ecological campaign in Venezuela. And she told the powers that be in the court that I was actually doing political campaign and I was using the courts to boost my political agenda. And not only was I laid off immediately, and I was escorted out of the court like I was a criminal, but I was blacklisted. And all I knew and to do for 18 years, it was be a court interpreter. I was a court interpreter and I lost my livelihood completely. I was unhireable. I applied to every courthouse you can imagine for an interpreter position. Nobody was hiring me.
Mm.
And that third blow did me in. And that's why I say this was the second darkest time in my life. And I did, I fell basically on a sofa crying. And that's when I acquired this eating disorder that I am dealing with right now. I gained about 40, 50 pounds that I still have on me. What got me out of that, I wanted to die, but what got me out of that was gratitude. It was, from praying like, God, why have you forsaken me? To say, God, show me why, or at least show me out of this. And just acknowledging God and saying, I know you are here and I know you're teaching me something. What is it? Just what is it? And it just came when I started asking that question, what are you trying to teach me? It was gratitude. And I just would drag myself from that sofa and I would say, God, there's warm water coming out of my shower. Thank you. It feels so good to have warm water. Lord, look, I have food here in my cupboard. Thank you, Lord. Lord, thank you. Because it was just starting thanking God for silly things that we take for granted, that we don't even think about it. We flip a light switch and the lights turn on. And it also helped for me to make that comparison, comparing it with the situation in Venezuela, because in Venezuela, people would go without water or power for weeks on end. And I knew it because I still have lots of family and friends there. And it was just going, you are such a good God that I have water. When so many people don't even have drinking water, I can take a long shower with warm water. And that gratitude was the antidote. It was, I'm not going to say that it was magic like this. No, I had to go through my valley. Okay. But it was God and gratitude to God and acknowledgement of God and just praising Jesus. And it was this song, I will praise you in the storm. That became it was my anthem. I will praise you in this storm, Lord. And that's what got me out of there.
What what year was that when you say 2018?
Hmm.
2018 when that hit the wall like that?
Yes.
And then you said, "Well, I'll just become a lawyer?" Bill Trent, I mean, seems like I don't know. I mean, that's not
Well,
an easy business either. I mean, were you gonna go do you practice in the same courts that kicked you out as an interpreter?
well, that was interesting. Let me tell you. Yes, I do. Um, I graduated as an attorney in Venezuela. So I can practice law in both countries, in Venezuela and here. My license is still active there. When I came here, I didn't even think about taking the bar exam because to me that was an impossible. California and New York are the hardest exams in the country. And my ex, he would tell me once in a while, go for the bar exam. And I would fight that. No, there's no way. I didn't believe I could do it. I would even argue with him and get really angry with him. Like, why? No, no. I give him that. He kept telling me, yes, you can do it. Go for it. He kept saying it. And I did try in 2015 and 16, I sat the bar exam. I didn't pass those two, but I was fairly close. And I was like, oh, I might be able to do this.
Mm.
Then the whole situation with my mom happened and the loss of the job. You know, then in 2020 with COVID, I was staying home. I was working from home. And I thought, oh, why not? And I studied for the bar exam and I passed it. I passed the bar exam and I took my oath, my attorney oath in 2021. And another very interesting thing happened in my years as an interpreter because of my upbringing, all that judgment and the narrow road and whatnot and punishment and all this. Inevitably, when I was in court, I would think, oh no, if I ever become an attorney, I'm going to put them all away. They need to be punished and whatnot. So my natural thing was I initially worked as a defense attorney while I applied to the district attorney's office because I wanted to prosecute them all. Finally, about 10 months into it, I was offered the position. I hated it. Hated it. I was like, Lord, are you serious? I had dropped my private practice, lost tens of thousands of dollars because I had to give my clients to other attorneys and live off my savings while the position finally was available and whatnot. And then I quit. I quit. I hated it. And I'm like, yes, I am an advocate and I am a natural advocate. And I believe that that's another silver lining, another benefit that I have gotten from all these experiences in life is that I I am an advocate. I will stand up for the underdog. I, whether a person is guilty or not, do not accuse, do not add charges that if my client didn't do that, he might have done a gazillion horrible things here, but you're not going to get him for the one he didn't do. I will fight to the nail. I fight really hard for my client. Yeah. Another silver lining from my life experiences is that precisely I have a lot of empathy because I know what it is to have all these things against you.
Do you think that things will get better in Venezuela so you can go back anytime soon to Venezuela if you wanted to go back and visit?
The way things are going, yes. Lots of positive things are happening already. Of course, from the outside, if you don't have the day to day news and of what's going on, it looks like it was for nothing because the current president is Delcy Rodriguez, who was Nicolas Maduro's vice president, and she's much worse than he ever was. But she's a necessary evil, and it is strategically necessary to have her there because you have a country where the 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 framework right there, both military and civilian, still support the regime. So, I hear people saying, well, but Maria Corina Machado, the Nobel Prize winner, why isn't she, since Maduro is out, why don't you put her in? Well, she will be dead within hours.
Mhm.
Okay. And what is she going to work with? If you have the entire framework of the country, from the military to governors and mayors and at all levels, they are all appointed by the regime. So the transition is going to have to be slow, and a lot of people are going to get away with what they have done, including, I believe, Delcy Rodriguez. She's negotiating her way out. She has done worse things than Maduro ever did. But things are
Well,
improved.
as long as she gets out, we don't care how she negotiates. Sometimes there's so much evil in the world. There's so many bad players out there that sometimes you just have to throw your hands up and just go, I know we can't kill them all. We can't prosecute them all. We just want them gone so that we can now start letting people have some freedom and start living their life. Because like you said, when you were younger, Venezuela was a great place. I mean, it was a democracy and a great place. And then it switched like they always do. A lot of countries switch thinking, well, this system's going to be better. And it's usually not, right? So then
Correct.
it goes back. But you've got a fascinating kind of full circle history of all the things that you've gone through. Where do you see that you go next? What do you see for yourself as far as your healing, what you want to do next for yourself, coming through all the trauma and the tragedies? What do you see next for you?
Well, my immediate challenge and opportunity is breaking this cycle of overeating. I had this binge eating disorder that started with that emotional eating back in 2018, and the answer is surrender. It's
Mm.
that one. That one is has proven to be really hard for me. I have been able to surrender. I mean, what can be harder to surrender and forgive your rapist, And I did. But this one, for some reason, for whatever reason, I am still struggling with it. But I know the answer, and the answer is surrender. It's food is also very tied to one of the things that see for myself in the future, which is I want to be a personal chef. I love food and I love to cook, and I am going to be working on my food manager's certification because I'm going to have one of those micro kitchen home based businesses in the future, and that should be a motivation for me to heal this overeating process so that I can fully enjoy without guilt and whatnot, you know, food.
Are you gonna you're
I
gonna
have
you're
to-
gonna give up that that law stuff and do something honorable and be people.
Oh, excuse me, because what I'm doing right now is not honorable. Are you
You know,
saying
the
that
thing
lawyers are not honorable?
they're horrible. But the thing about but they do know the best lawyer jokes. Lawyers know the best lawyer I have a bunch of lawyers in my family, and a lot of
I have
clients
to.
who are lawyers. But you know, the interesting thing about food is food represents the one thing that you've never had in your life, and that's comfort.
Mm,
Food offers comfort, and from the time
correct.
you were a child all the way through all the different challenges, your mother passing, leaving the country, not being able to come back to see her, challenging relationships. Um, there's been a lack of comfort in your life. And now you're at a point, or you got to a point where you can give yourself comfort, and that comfort was food. Um, and what you'll do is, because I believe in you, I think what you're going to do is you're going to be able to replace the food with another level of comfort. You'll find something that's going to give you that peace that's going to allow you to give it up. It'll come. You know, it'll come at your time. The other thing is, I don't know many skinny chefs.
Gosh, come on, leave me some hope here. I know.
Well, I tried to, but I really don't know. But actually, no. Actually, one of the greatest chefs that we had in the desert. I worked at a one of the greatest, best restaurants in the entire desert. High, high, high end. You know, all the waiters, we wore tuxedos as a captain, front waiter, sommelier. His name was Jean-Louis Jolinet, and he was one of the most honored chefs. He'd go to France every year and win some boo-boo award. Actually, Jean-Louis was a skinny chef, and he was one of the top chefs in the country. So, he was a good friend of mine. So, yes, there are skinny chefs, but
Yes,
don't you think so? That perhaps it's comfort that you're sinking through the food because you just really haven't had a lot of comfort in your life, kiddo.
correct. And that's honestly one of the few comforts and pleasures. And it is addictive. It is addictive and it gives you comfort. It's just I keep telling myself and self-awareness is that important is it is a very short-lived comfort. It is very short-lived. It's while I am sitting in front of the food and it's just surrendering that. I know I will succeed. I just don't know when.
Well, you've always overcome everything that you've been dealt. You've always found a way to overcome. Right now, you're just not willing to give this up. This is something that you want to hold on to because it's the comfort, makes you feel good. And as long as it's not out of control to the point where you're hurting your health or hurting anyone else, well, let it roll for a little bit. But at some point, you're going to say, okay, I'm ready now. And when you are, you'll take care of it.
Correct. And what if I could just do that right now? What if I could get to that point right now? That's another one of my what if I could. What if I could get to that point?
Have you tried replacing food with sex?
No.
Because they'll do the same thing as long and there's
Ah.
way less calories in sex.
And you burn calories instead of that's an idea.
Aha. And the great thing is you don't even need another person for it. You just you take care of it. Boy, we
Oh, you're
run out of
bad.
control there. Well, you are marvelous, my friend.
Thank you.
You're wonderful. I love your story. Love where you're going. I'm definitely going to have you. We've got to come back and do this again when you start your cooking because I love cooking. I love to cook. I don't love to eat for some reason, but I love to cook. Just food. I don't know. I eat because I have to. I'm not a real fan of food. But I have to ask you one last question. I lied earlier. I might need a defense attorney. I lied earlier. I said I had one question. What if you could question? But I actually always have two questions. I never give you the second question because I want it to be spur of the moment. So before we sign off, before we go away, is there a one last thought or a message or a saying or a quote? Is there something that's very special to Mirta that you'd love to leave us with? before we sign off today?
Yes. And it has to do with my identity because I lost my identity. I didn't have an identity, or I put my identity on the wrong things before. And now my identity is in Christ, is a child of God. Is when we put our identity on things that and circumstances, um, our identity changes and goes away and we get lost. But when we put our identity in Christ, that is a constant. And no matter what happens to us, we will remain on that rock and our identity will remain unchanged. And we are on solid ground, no matter what happens around us. And again, I'll repeat what I said at the beginning. Life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond to it.
Truer words were never spoken, my dear. Truer words were never spoken. That is 100% truth. Um, what did they say? If you put your faith in people, you're sure to be disappointed. If you put your faith in the Lord, you're sure to be something. What's the end of that?
Oh gosh, it was going so well.
I know, right? I completely screwed that up. I was on a roll there for a minute, and then I
It's
just
okay, you're
completely screwed
forgiven.
up.
God forgave you. So who am I not to?
I'll figure it out. I'll remember it. I'll text it to you. But you have been wonderful, my dear. You've been
You.
wonderful. You're an inspiration to people. Um, where can people reach out to you? If people wanted to say, "Hey, I love your story. I feel connected to you. I've, you know, I want to reach out to you." Where can people reach you? Are you on any of the social medias or
I
anything like that
am.
that people can reach out to you?
And it's my full name. I mean, it's really long, but they can find me. I know it's Mirta Carolina Fuguet Alba. So, boom, there's a mouthful for you.
That
But,
was so
it's
easy. It sounds like a Edition Italian restaurant. I'll have the famma fagolagula passarale and magule salad. Okay, I need say it one more time because I love the name. Holy crap.
Mirta, which is
Mirta?
Mirta,
Yeah.
and then Carolina is like Carolina,
Okay.
and then Fuguet is F as in Frank, Guet. And then I use my mother's last name as well, not legally, but in social media,
Of
which is
course.
Alba,
Throw
ALB.
one more name on the end of that. What?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, now, when you get married again, are you gonna hyphen? Like, are you gonna go Mirta, Carolina, Fergate, Alba, Smith?
I have no idea. I
Don't
really
do
have
it.
no idea. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Well, I know it's very popular in the Latin cultures to do that. Like my mother's name was uh Chavez. What was the other one? She was Guatemalan.
Mm,
Uh, so it was something something Chavez Hernandez Gonzalez or something like that. I was like,
yeah.
and she said that they kept, they'd keep adding it, with hyphen it. I'm like,
In Guatemala, they do. They do.
yes, yeah.
And
See,
they add also first names as last name. So you have somebody whose last name can be Juan and Jose and Diego. And then they are called like you don't know which one is the first name, the last name Juan, Gonzalo, Diego, Perez, Luis, Juan, Antonio. Yeah,
all I know is all my Mexican friends and all the guys that I work with, they just call me Mr. Gary. I love it. They just call me Mr. Gary. I'm
Mr.
like,
Gary.
okay, Mr. Carlos, whatever. Um, but you've been so much fun. So we're gonna somehow track you down. We're just gonna keep punching names into the computer until your name pops up. And then, but we're, and I'll post it on there. But Mirta, you've been wonderful, and I
Oh,
love
thank
you
you.
for sharing how much you did and sharing so honestly and openly. I'm sure it's taken you a lot of time to be able to share like this and to give like this because it's not easy. You've had a lot of boo-boos, that's for sure.
But, but healing is just a journey.
Keep pushing, man. Okay, my dear.
Mhm.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you much. All right,
Thank you.
guys. Thank
God
you for
bless you.
listening. This was a good one. See you soon. See ya.